Have you ever wondered what truly makes humanity unique? Not our weapons, not our technology, but something far deeper, something the galaxy could never prepare for. Tonight's story is one the stars still whisper about. A tale of survival, of defiance, and of a moment when an entire alien armada learned why you never underestimate humans. It began on the fringe of known space, in a quiet mining colony called Kessler 9. To the rest of the galaxy, it was insignificant, just another backwater outpost where humans toiled in the dust. But to the Zorathi Empire, a war-hungry species with fleets that stretched across entire systems, Kessler 9 was an opportunity. They had conquered countless civilizations, and they expected no resistance here. After all, what could a few thousand miners possibly do against a battle fleet? The Zorathi descended like a storm. Their warships blackened the sky, plasma fire tore through the colony's defense grid, and their soldiers poured onto the surface. Within hours, Kessler 9 was ash and rubble. And yet, something unusual happened. The Zorathi expected surrender. They expected fear. Instead, they found resistance, humans fighting back with tools, mining charges, even bare hands. One Zorathi commander recorded it in disbelief. They fight with nothing, and yet they fight still. It is not logical. What the Zorathi did not understand was simple. Humans don't need logic when survival is at stake. Among the survivors was a foreman named Elias Kane. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was just a man who had spent his life in the mines, leading crews through collapsing tunnels and volatile storms. But when the colony fell, and the cries of his people echoed in the ruins, Kane did something no alien could have predicted. He refused to kneel. Kane gathered what survivors he could: men, women, children, miners and engineers, farmers and teachers. They had no weapons worth mentioning, no training, no reinforcements coming to save them. But they had determination, and that was enough. They vanished into the labyrinthine tunnels of Kessler 9's mining network. The Zorathi, proud and arrogant, assumed they had routed the humans. But within those tunnels, the war was only beginning. The first strike came 3 nights later. A Zorathi patrol, heavily armed and armored, disappeared without a trace. Then another and another. At first, the Empire dismissed it as malfunctions or desertion. But then the bodies started appearing, shredded by mining charges, crushed under deliberate tunnel collapses, picked off one by one in the dark, where even the Zorathi's advanced optics failed. The galaxy would later call it the Tunnel War. To the humans, it was simply survival. Kane and his people turned their colony into a trap. Every tunnel became a weapon, every minecart a missile, every shaft a potential grave for the invaders. The miners knew the tunnels better than anyone, and in that darkness, humans became predators. The Zorathi, despite their technological superiority, found themselves hunted. One survivor's account, an alien mercenary who fought alongside the Zorathi, describes it perfectly. It was madness. They were everywhere and nowhere. A shadow would move and your comrade was gone. They fought like demons, not for conquest, not for glory, but because they refused to die quietly. Weeks passed, and the great fleet that had expected to conquer a colony in a day was now bleeding men and machines in the dirt. The Zorathi grew desperate. They deployed heavier weapons, collapsing entire tunnel systems just to root out a handful of survivors. And yet, the humans endured. They adapted, shifted, and struck harder. But here's the part that truly unsettled the Empire. The humans didn't just fight for themselves. They fought for each other. They carried the wounded, shared their food, shielded children with their own bodies. The Zorathi, bred on conquest and dominance, couldn't comprehend it. To them, mercy was weakness, compassion a flaw. But for humans, it was the very thing that kept them going. One by one, alien warlords began to realize the truth. They weren't fighting miners. They were fighting a species that had crawled out of a death world, survived ice ages and plagues, famine and war. A species that had learned to endure everything the universe threw at them and come back stronger. The turning point came when Kane led a strike directly against the Zorathi command hub. With nothing but stolen weapons and mining explosives, his ragtag fighters stormed the heart of the invaders' operations. It was chaos, flames, shouts, tunnels collapsing all around them. But Cain had one goal: sever the head of the snake. And he succeeded. The Zorothi commander was killed in the assault, and his death sent shockwaves through the ranks. The invaders, once unified and confident, faltered. That was all humanity needed. From the shadows, the survivors surged. They overwhelmed patrols, seized weapons, and piece by piece drove the Zorothi off their world. When the smoke cleared, Kessler 9 was rubble. The colony was scarred beyond recognition, but it was still human. Against an empire, against overwhelming odds, the miners had stood their ground. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Civilizations, who had long cowered before the Zorothi, now saw something extraordinary. If a handful of miners could resist the Empire, what could humanity as a whole accomplish? The answer came swiftly. Rebellions ignited across Zorothi territory. Worlds long enslaved rose up, inspired by the story of Kessler 9. And at the heart of every uprising, the rallying cry was the same: remember the humans. The Zorothi Empire, once feared beyond measure, began to crumble, not because of vast fleets or super weapons, but because they had underestimated a single truth: humans do not break. And what of Elias Cain? His name became legend, not as a conqueror or a king, but as a symbol. He vanished into the stars after the war, never seeking power or reward. But his story remained a reminder etched into history that sometimes the smallest spark can ignite the greatest fire. So, why are humans special? It isn't strength, it isn't intelligence, it isn't even courage. It's that unshakable will to endure, to fight, to protect each other, even when the universe itself demands surrender. That is humanity's gift. That is our curse. That is why the stars remember us. And maybe, just maybe, that's why the galaxy will never be the same again. So what do you think, my friends? Could you have survived in the tunnels of Kessler 9? Would humanity's spirit of resistance still shine if you were there? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take on what truly makes us human. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, share it with a fellow sci-fi fan, and don't forget to subscribe for more tales where humanity proves exactly why we're the species no one should underestimate. Until next time, remember, humans are special.